House Speaker Nancy Pelosi announced today an official impeachment inquiry following a phone call between President Trump and the president of Ukraine regarding an opponent in the U.S. presidential 2020 election. During that phone call, the president admits that he talked about his rival, former Vice President Joe Biden. A whistleblower who has not been revealed claims that he went further, asking for some dirt on his opponent and his family by withholding military aid to Ukraine. Law professor Bill Hing with the University of San Francisco is now here with us to discuss those details. Hello.
Hi, how are you?
Great. So, Professor Hing, following this move by Pelosi, what can we expect next in this process?
Well, she's called for an impeachment investigation, and that's new for her. She hasn't taken that position until now. And so there's going to be 6 different committees that are looking into this, primarily the Judiciary Committee. And they're, in essence, looking for high crimes and misdemeanors, which is a term that's used in the Constitution, or treason. And if there's a determination that such crimes exist, there will be a vote in the House of Representatives to determine whether any charges, or what are called articles of impeachment, should be sustained.
Are they looking for that evidence in possibly getting a hold of the transcript of the conversation? And is it possible to find evidence related for those kinds of crimes in a conversation between the Ukrainian president, as Trump has confessed to having?
Yes, and I think many members of the House have already indicated that they believe that if the president conditioned funding to Ukraine on Ukraine cooperating in terms of looking for dirt for a political opponent, many people in Congress have already expressed that that is a high crime and misdemeanor, and that they will vote for that to be an article of impeachment.
Is there anything in the Constitution that would determine that to be a crime? When in elections, can you turn to a foreign country for that kind of information against opponents?
That's an excellent question. The Constitution is very vague. It doesn't have any examples. The most recent example was back in the 1990s when President Clinton was impeached. The House brought charges of impeachment against him for lying about having an affair and obstructing justice into the investigation of that affair. And so, in addition to this most recent incident relating to Ukraine, many of the investigations have been centering on the Mueller report and whether or not the president obstructed justice in terms of looking into Russian interference in the 2016 election. So there's several things on the plate that the Constitution could very well be intended to include.
House Speaker Nancy Pelosi said that the allegation that the President of the United States sought to enlist a foreign government to interfere in our democratic process by investigating one of his political rivals is deeply alarming. But Professor Hing, if it is true, is it illegal?
I believe that it does constitute a high crime and misdemeanor to use the power of the presidency to maneuver and to put pressure on a foreign country to dig dirt on a political opinion. That has nothing to do with foreign policy. It has nothing to do with diplomacy. It has everything to do with abuse of the presidential office. And I do think that many members of Congress will vote to sustain that as an article of impeachment, as a high crime, the abuse of power.
Former FBI Director James Comey also weighing in today, saying although the president's actions may be considered worrisome, impeachment would make matters worse with the president's supporters, and the focus should remain on the voters deciding in the next election. Let's listen into that interview.
He definitely engaged in conduct that's laid out in the Mueller report that is deeply concerning, incidences of obstruction of justice, but really Congress should figure out whether that would trigger impeachment. As a citizen, I kind of hope not, because I think the American people would be let off the hook if Donald Trump were impeached and removed from office, and a lot of his supporters would think some sort of coup had taken place. We need to take responsibility for this and vote next November and show that we have a certain set of values and we insist that our leaders reflect those values.
Hing, what do you think about Comey's opinion in let's just wait for the election and see what the voters want?
Yeah, he's taking a political position. He did not deny that these are impeachable offenses. He's just saying let the voters decide. And many members of Congress understand that this could play into the president's hand, that he might gain sympathy. Uh, but it's a political question. What he's raising: should we bring impeachment charges and risk losing in the Senate? Or should we just leave it to the voters and bring out all this information during the campaign?
And what of his opinion on possibly President Trump's supporters feeling like this might be a coup?
Well, I believe that that's something that is always going to be on the plate whenever when there's an attempt to remove a president. Of course, his supporters are going to think that it's a coup. Keep this in mind. There were two attempts to impeach in the past, actual articles of impeachment, Andrew Johnson and Bill Clinton, and neither one of them was convicted by the Senate. President Nixon resigned before it went to trial. And so I definitely think that it's a political question that's being raised here. Should we just leave it to the voters, or should we use this constitutional process that is available? And it's a tough call, and I think it was tough for Speaker Pelosi, but she's leaning, given the severity of this most recent incident dealing with Ukraine, she's leaning towards the constitutional avenue.
Pelosi and Biden both said today that it would be unconstitutional of President Trump to withhold a transcript of that conversation. But earlier today, President Trump promised to release a declassified and unredacted version of that phone conversation with President Zelensky of Ukraine. He said, quote, "You will see it. It was a very friendly and totally appropriate call, no pressure. And unlike Joe Biden and his son, no quid pro quo." He continued that this is nothing more than a continuation of the greatest and most destructive witch hunt of all time. So what of his promises of releasing that phone call? Would that still put things in the same place that they are today?
Well, I think it's yet to be seen. Let's look at the transcript. First of all, he has promised things in the past that he hasn't delivered on. And so if he delivers this full unredacted transcript, that's wonderful. Now let's take a close look at it to see what's in the transcript and see if it is offensive. And if it's not, then he's made his case. But it's yet to be seen what's actually in it. And incidentally, there's a related issue. The whistleblower had more than just this one transcript in mind. He was considering, the whistleblower apparently was concerned about the whole surroundings, the environment around this phone call. And so it's important that the country hear from the whistleblower himself or herself. And so far, the president's staff has said, no, the whistleblower complaint should not be revealed. So that's a separate issue that I think the House of Representatives would like to see as well.
And what do you think of this situation all stemming from a conversation with specifically Ukrainian President Vladimir Zelensky? Why him? I mean, Americans have gotten closer with Ukraine over time because of what happened, of course, with Russia annexing Crimea. So where does this leave their country, and why do you think that the president would have reached out to him?
Well, the president knew that Ukraine needs these funds. They need the assistance, these defense funds, and the majority of Congress agreed with that. Both House and the Senate agreed with that. And so the theory of those who think that President Trump violated his oath of office is that knowing that the president of Ukraine needed this support, that the president tried to strong-arm him by withholding the funds, by holding up the funds for at least a couple weeks while he was trying to extract a promise from the president of Ukraine for cooperation in trying to investigate Joe Biden's son. And so that's the theory, is that that's why the president reached out to Ukraine, because President Trump knew that Ukraine was in a vulnerable position, that they needed very imminently, they needed the support of the United States in their efforts against Russia.
Where do you think that this leaves us now moving forward and getting closer to the 2020 presidential election?
Well, that's it's yet to be seen. What's going to happen, I think, in the next few weeks is there's going to be a lot of attention on this and on the Ukraine issue, and there's going to be renewed interest in what happened in what's alleged in the Mueller report and reported there. And so the question is, how much of a distraction these efforts in the House of Representatives will be to the presidential campaign. We know that there's still 20 some odd Democrats that are running, and there's another debate coming up in October. Obviously, this issue is going to come up in that debate as well. And I think it depends on how much the American public is interested in this issue. I think a majority of Democrats are interested in this issue. So I don't think it will be a distraction for Democrat voters, but I think it may be a distraction and very upsetting to Republican voters. And it may be a galvanizing issue for much of President Trump's base.
What do you think about the timing of this all? This conversation happened in July, and today there was a really big meeting, of course, with the UN, and the president says that this is all orchestrated to distract from that important meeting.
Well, I don't think it was orchestrated to distract. It's definitely a coincidence because this is when Adam Schiff, the chair of the House Intelligence Committee, a week ago revealed to the public this whistleblower complaint. There's no indication that Congressman Schiff withheld that information to time it in a way that would coincide with the UN presentation. So I think that the he won't do this, but I think that we need to chalk it up to coincidence that it came up at the exact same time.
Thank you so much, law professor Bill Hing with the University of San Francisco, for talking with us.
You're welcome.
You're watching Chron On, the Bay Area streaming news 24/7.